Hey guys, so in this module we are discussing the giving of gifts. Here's my presentation on the chapter that we read and giving gifts in the school setting. So first question some of us might have is why would we even use gifts in a school setting? Um, I'm sure there's a lot of different thoughts that go into this from the different perceptions other people might have, but I think using gifts properly can uh, be beneficial in a variety of ways. You can use it to motivate students to get done with certain tasks. It can improve staff morale by bringing them together, getting them pumped up for an event. Obviously, we can celebrate achievements by using gifts as a reward. Um, and going back to staff morale, you can unify any stakeholder, student, staff, or community members. If you're working towards a larger event and maybe use an incentive gift or some type of reward for them, and in the end, you can just give gifts for appreciation. I know a lot of teachers work their butts off in class, and kids do the same. So every now and then, it's just nice to reward them for their hard work and just show the staff and students that you appreciate what they're doing and all the hard work they've been putting in. Student gifts, when it comes to fundraising incentive gifts, those gifts are specific to students who are participating in that event. The gifts need to be age appropriate, so something that might be right for an 8th grader is not necessarily good for a 1st grader or 2nd grader. You don't want it to cost a considerable amount of money because you have to use the profits that you make from your fundraising event to purchase those gifts. You definitely don't want it to cut into your profits because those profits can be used for something else that will benefit a larger population. And you want the students, whoever are doing the fundraising, whatever money they raise, that money needs to go back to those students who actually raise the money. So you definitely don't want, if I'm like, for example, in basketball, if I'm raising money for my basketball team, I don't necessarily want a large portion of that money going to, let's say, wrestling, for example. Even though we do like to share money and help each other out, you don't want your kids who are raising that money to have to give up their money if another group of kids didn't work for it. So an example of that is something, or an example of a fundraising incentive gift is something as simple as tickets to a sporting event. Moving on to special achievement gifts. Awards have been used for a long time to acknowledge student success in school or an athlete's accomplishments in a sport or event. Once again, that needs to be age appropriate, affordable. You don't want to spend more on one student than another if they're achieving some of the same things. And you probably don't want to give athletes, let's say, an accomplishment that an athlete has. You don't want to spend more money on them than you would for a student accomplishing something pretty prestigious in school. It needs to be equitable and affordable. You can use the general fund for certificates and things like that. Let's say like a kid has an enrollment. They've been in school, didn't miss a school all year, so you might have a certificate for them. The general fund can be used to purchase those certificates. And when it comes to athletes' accomplishments, if you're getting the medals or plaques or whatever it is, you can use the athletic fund for that. Most times, though, businesses or parents will donate some money for these kind of special achievement gifts, which will help the school in the long run. And I think anytime an outside source is willing to donate money to the school to help with these gifts, it's a good idea, especially when it comes to the financial side, and we'll get to that here in a little bit. But an example of a special achievement gift is anything from medals, trophies, or certificates. Now into staff member gifts. I did a little do's and don'ts from some of the stuff out of the chapter. Uh, some of the do's, you want to use procedures that have been written probably in your teacher handbook, decided by the administration and approved by the school board. The decisions for getting staff members gifts need to be decided by a committee, not just individual people. You also need to meet regularly. The book, I know, recommended once a year. I think something more like meeting quarterly would be appropriate. Things are always happening in the school system. I don't know if once a year is really an efficient way to manage and account for the staff members. That's just my opinion. But I think anytime you get staff members together and you have a committee meeting more regularly is a benefit. And this a good do is also to use a staff account. You probably don't. You'll make your own staff account, and that money, whatever you raise, will go into that account for staff member gifts. Some of the don'ts here, you definitely don't want one staff member in charge. Not that we don't trust the people we work with, but that money could definitely be manipulated, and it's just a safeguard having the money operated or the account operated by more than one person. You definitely don't want one individual collecting the money, depositing the money, and purchasing the gifts. Once again, we need to have safeguards in place to protect the funds that the teachers are raising for themselves and to use for other people who need it. So general funds should not be used for a lot of stuff when it comes to staff dinners, anything that really doesn't have anything to do with the school. Like the book mentioned, general fund is normally used for a lot of the students. So most of that money is raised for the students, so it needs to be used for the students. You don't want to use a large portion of that on the staff if you don't need to. Special occasion gifts, we keep coming back to this appropriate price. You just don't want to be extravagant. You want to make sure that the gift shows that you care, show that you appreciate what they're doing, and needs to be appropriate. Gift for life events. So this could be, like I have my example at the bottom, could be a baby shower, wedding gift, could even be flowers for a funeral, things like that. The money is raised by the staff, and this can go into a specific account. I know the book calls it a remembrance fund. It could just be a staff fund or a staff account. You can call it whatever you'd like, but the money is raised by the staff, whether it's in dues or donations. And you also want to use a committee, just like before, in deciding how to purchase the gifts and what gifts to purchase. And you also want to meet regularly, like we mentioned before. The book mentions they'd like you to meet at least once a year. So, fundraising incentive gifts are used to motivate staff members to reach a certain goal when they are having a fundraising event. Normally, you don't want to use more than 5% of your overall profit from whatever event you were doing. You want to use a little less than this, and we keep going back to some of the same stuff, but you just want to make sure that it's affordable gifts. It doesn't have to be extravagant, just a sign of appreciation. Now, when it comes to incentive gifts, of course, they can be a little nicer, but use that 5% mark as a nice rule of thumb. It is for the staff members that meet a specific criteria. So whatever staff members were actually involved in the fundraising, that money needs to go towards them, and only for the ones that met specific criteria, whether it was to raise a certain amount or a tiered system, whatever the case is. An example of a gift or an incentive gift could be maybe having that staff member has a concession credit. So maybe they won, if they sold so much or raised so much money, they could get a $10 concession credit at a football game or a basketball game or something like that. All staff gifts are exactly that. It is gifts for the entire staff. It could be staff funded, or normally it's donated by an organization. I know here at Chase County, one of our clubs, I believe it's NHS, provides all of the teachers with a little care package at the beginning of the year. It has some supplies in it for us and a little thank you for telling us that they appreciate what we do. General fund is primarily, once again, used for the entire school community and preferably for the students. You don't normally want to use the general fund for all staff gifts. And when it comes to receiving cash or cash equivalent, whether that's gift cards or whatever, that does have to be reported on your W-2s and reported to the IRS as extra income, and you'll be taxed on that as well. So that's probably something you want to stay away from, because I just don't know if teachers or staff members want to be taxed more for extra income. So a way around that, I guess, is using an outside source or an organization to donate the gifts instead of raising funds from the staff members, or having the school pay those staff members or hand those over. So as long as it's from an outside organization, you should be fine, because it then is a gift from an outside organization, not from the school. An example of this is any type of staff apparel. When it comes to special efforts for students or staff members, these are normally gifts that benefit staff members or students in need. This could be for health issues, or maybe they're just struggling at a given time. Definitely you want to check with your accounting office, make sure everything's squared away. And once again, if you're giving cash to a staff member from the school, it will be taxed, and it is extra income. Like I mentioned in the previous slide, using an outside organization to make that donation would probably be a way to get around that. An example here would be a staff member needing help with hospital bills. Food for thought, rule of thumb. I really liked in the book the tips it gives. I mentioned a rule of thumb is you need to ask yourself the question when it comes to giving gifts: does the item leave the school when the teacher transfers or terminates? So I think that's a great rule of thumb for administration to follow when they're approving gifts to be given to staff or to students. And also perceptions. You need to not worry about what stakeholders are thinking, but just be cognizant of when you're giving gifts, to just ask yourself that question: how does this look? If you're giving out a car at a football game, that might be a little sketchy, and people will start thinking that you're using money a little recklessly. So you might need to just think about what other people's perceptions may be, depending on what gift you're giving. And the last thing it comes down to is the school community, in my mind, is a family-oriented place. I mean, I view my peers and colleagues as family. A lot of my students, I'm close with a lot of my students. They're great kids. So I just think when it comes to giving gifts, as long as you are doing it for the right reasons and following the procedures, it's a great thing. Last slide, I absolutely think yes to gifts. So it's a great way to show appreciation to staff members and students. It's a great motivational tool. You do need to follow the guidelines set by the school board and the administration. But in the end, it's a great sign of appreciation, and people really do like it when people acknowledge them for the hard work they're putting in. So here's my PowerPoint. I appreciate you guys watching. Here's till next time.